The stars looked different from the bridge of the U.S. frontier. Captain Olivia Martinez stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the unfamiliar patterns of Alpha Centauri's system through the main viewport. After 3 months of faster-than-light travel, humanity's first deep space vessel had arrived at its destination. "Sensor sweep complete, Captain," said Commander Jack Nelson, her executive officer. "We're picking up unusual energy signatures at coordinates 227 by 84. Martinez nodded. "Take us in, Lieutenant Fisher. 1/4 thrust. Let's not appear too eager." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. This mission represented everything humanity had worked toward for generations: first contact with intelligent alien life. The unusual energy patterns discovered 2 years ago had finally been confirmed as artificial in origin. Now, the U.S. frontier carried Earth's hopes for peaceful introduction to the galactic community. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple vessels approaching," said Ryan Kelly, the communications officer. His fingers danced across his console. "Massive ships, ma'am. Much larger than ours. I count 7. No, 8 of them." Martinez felt her heart race, but kept her expression calm. "Open all frequencies, standard greeting package ready. Let's introduce ourselves properly." The view screen shifted to show the approaching vessels. They were unlike anything designed on Earth, sleek obsidian structures that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, with odd geometric patterns pulsing along their hulls. They moved with impossible grace for their size. "Transmission ready, Captain," Kelly said. "Send it." The message was simple but represented years of linguistic and cultural research, a greeting in mathematics and basic imagery designed to transcend language barriers, followed by peaceful declarations in Earth's major languages. For 3 tense minutes, the bridge crew waited. The alien ships continued their approach, forming a half-circle around the frontier. "Anything, Mr. Kelly?" Martinez asked. "No response on any channel, Captain." "Wait, I'm detecting energy buildup in the lead vessel." "It's—" A blinding flash cut him off. The frontier rocked violently as alarms blared throughout the ship. "Direct hit to our port shields," shouted Nelson. "Shield capacity at 60%. Martinez grabbed her command chair as another blast struck the ship. "Battle stations. Defensive posture only. Continue broadcasting our peaceful intentions." "They're not listening, Captain," Kelly shouted over the noise. "They're jamming our transmissions now." The ship shuddered again. A console exploded near the navigation station, sending Lieutenant Fisher tumbling to the deck. Medical Officer Dr. Alan Patel rushed to help him. "Shields failing," reported the tactical officer. "Weapons systems damage." Martinez made the hardest decision of her career. Prepare emergency distress beacon. Include all sensor data and first contact records. She took a deep breath. Earth needs to know what happened here. As the beacon launched, a final barrage hit the frontier. The lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency lighting. "Captain, they're preparing to board us," Nelson said quietly. Martinez looked at her crew. Their faces showed fear, but also determination. "Prepare security teams. We'll meet our visitors with dignity." Within 20 minutes, the hull breach alarms sounded. The aliens entered through the shuttle bay, overwhelming the security teams with superior technology. They moved through the ship with ruthless efficiency. When they reached the bridge, Martinez stood tall. The alien in the lead was tall and insectoid, with multiple limbs and gleaming black eyes. Its chitinous armor reflected the emergency lights as it surveyed the humans with what seemed like contempt. "I am Captain Olivia Martinez of Earth," she said firmly. "We came in peace." The creature made a series of clicking sounds. A device on its armor translated. "I am Supreme Admiral Crestel of the Sulfuri Dominion. Your species is primitive and unworthy. Your mistake was believing you belong among the stars." As the bridge crew was rounded up, Kelly managed to send one final encrypted message to the distress beacon. Then the humans were marched from their bridge as prisoners, their vessel claimed as a trophy by conquerors they'd hoped to greet as friends. Humanity's first contact had become humanity's first interstellar war, and it had been lost in less than an hour. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council stretched farther than the eye could see. Curved walls rose hundreds of feet upward to meet in a dome of shifting colors that mimicked the galaxies beyond. Representatives from 27 spacefaring species sat in tiered sections, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Delegate Zorn, a blue-skinned humanoid with silver patterns flowing across his face, watched the large central display with 4 of his 6 eyes. The remaining 2 focused on the data flowing across his personal screen. The Xalthori have claimed another victory, he noted to analyst Miri beside him. She was smaller, with feathered skin, and large, owl-like eyes that blinked rarely. Indeed, Miri replied. A new species this time. They call themselves humans. The display showed footage from the Xalthori ships. The human vessel looked primitive compared to the sleek Dominion fleet. Its destruction was swift, almost pitiful. At the center of the hall, Supreme Admiral Krestal stood on the speaker's platform. His chitinous body gleamed under the lights as his translator converted his clicks and whistles to the standard galactic language. The human species demonstrated typical primitive aggression, Krestal declared. Their weapons were armed. Their approach was direct. We merely defended our territory, as is our right. Murmurs spread through the assembled delegates. Most seemed to accept the Xalthori's version without question. The Dominion had been a powerful force in the galaxy for centuries. Few challenged their accounts. What will become of the captured humans? Asked a representative from the Volari Collective. They will be studied, Krestal answered. Their technology is crude but shows potential. Their planet remains isolated and unaware of our presence, as dictated by the natural progression protocol. In a high-security Xalthori prison ship orbiting a moon in the Alpha Centauri system, Security Chief Lisa Rodriguez paced her small cell. 3 weeks had passed since the attack on the frontier. The cell walls were smooth metal with no visible seams. A force field served as the fourth wall, glowing faintly blue. Rodriguez had been separated from Captain Martinez and most of the crew after the first week. The aliens seemed to be dividing them by specialty. As head of security, she had been subjected to more intense questioning than most. She stopped pacing when she heard the familiar sound of the guards approaching. Their hard exoskeletons made distinctive clicking sounds against the metal floors. Rodriguez had been counting guards, mapping routines, and studying the ship's layout during her brief trips to questioning sessions. It wasn't much, but it was something. If there was ever a chance for escape, she would be ready. 2 Xalthori guards deactivated the force field. Without speaking, they motioned for her to follow. This was new. Usually they simply restrained and transported prisoners. Rodriguez cautiously stepped into the corridor, mind racing to memorize new details of the ship. They led her to a large chamber where several other humans waited. She recognized Engineer Sam Powell and Lieutenant Greg Barnes from the engine room. Captain Martinez sat stiffly in a chair at the center, her face showing signs of rough treatment, but her eyes still defiant. A large Xalthori entered, more decorated than the others Rodriguez had seen. The translator at its throat activated. The Galactic Council has registered your species' defeat, it announced without preamble. Earth remains ignorant of our existence, as is appropriate for primitive planets. You will provide us with information about your homeworld to help us decide its fate. Martinez stood slowly. And if we refuse? The Xalthori made a sound that the translator didn't convert. Rodriguez guessed it might be laughter. You misunderstand, the alien said. This is not a negotiation. The Council has invoked the natural progression protocol. Advanced species guide the development of the galaxy. Primitive ones comply or perish. Rodriguez caught Martinez's eye across the room. A silent message passed between them. Whatever these aliens believed about humans, they were making a serious error. Humans didn't give up easily, even when the rules seemed stacked against them. And somewhere, The distress signal from the frontier was speeding toward Earth, carrying the truth of what had happened among the stars. Sam Powell was not a soldier. Before joining the Frontier mission, he had been a civilian engineer specializing in computer systems. Now, as he worked on the waste recycling unit he had been assigned to repair, he found his skills serving a different purpose. The Xalfori guards paid little attention to him. They considered maintenance work beneath them and saw Powell as no threat. This gave him freedom that other prisoners didn't have. For 3 days, he had been noticing patterns in the ship's computer terminals that he could access while repairing systems. The alien technology was advanced, but it followed logical principles. Powell had discovered that the Xalfori systems contained vast databases of information. Some of it appeared to be historical records, laws, and protocols, the rules that governed space and its many species. As the guard watching him became distracted by a communication on its personal device, Powell quickly connected his repair tool to the nearby terminal. He had modified the tool to download data during his previous repair assignment. The connection was brief, just 15 seconds, but it was enough to copy a significant portion of a database labeled Interstellar Conflict Protocols. Later, back in his cell, Powell carefully examined the data using a small display screen he had salvaged and hidden inside his uniform. The language was alien, but the translation program from the ship's computer had been included in the download. His eyes widened as he read. "This can't be right," he whispered to himself. The document detailed specific rules for warfare between spacefaring races. The first and most important rule was clear. No species may be subjugated without formal declaration of war and opportunity for surrender. Powell sat back against the cold wall of his cell. The Xalfori had violated this fundamental rule. They had attacked the frontier without warning and without offering any terms of surrender. According to this document, their actions were illegal under galactic law. He needed to share this information. The next day, during the short exercise period when prisoners were allowed to walk in a designated area, Powell managed to move close to Major Kevin Wright, the highest-ranking military officer still with the main group of prisoners. "Major," Powell whispered as they passed each other, "I found something important. The Xalfori broke the rules when they attacked us." Wright gave no sign that he heard, but when they passed again, he murmured, "My cell. 200 hours." That night, Powell used his knowledge of the ship's systems to bypass the lock on his cell door. The corridors were dimly lit during the night cycle. He moved carefully, avoiding the patrol routes he had memorized during his repair assignments. Wright was waiting when Powell silently slipped into his cell. The major looked tired but alert. "Show me," Wright said simply. Powell activated his hidden display and showed Wright the document. "It's the rules of interstellar conflict. The Xalfori violated rule number 1 by attacking us without warning or offering surrender terms." Wright studied the document, his face grim. This could change everything. If these rules are recognized by the Galactic Council, the Xalfori attack was illegal. "There's more," Powell said. "The document mentions consequences for violations. A species wrongfully attacked has the right to appeal to the Council for intervention. We need to get this information to Captain Martinez and Chief Rodriguez," Wright said. "They're being held in the high-security section." Powell nodded. "I think I can access the communication system during my next repair assignment. We can send a message to their section." Wright placed a hand on Powell's shoulder. "Good work, Sam. For the first time since we were captured, we have hope." As Powell carefully made his way back to his cell, his mind raced with possibilities. The Xalfori thought they had won by their own rules, but they had broken the most important rule of all, and now a human had discovered their mistake. The game was about to change. 3 days after Powell's discovery, the plan was set in motion. Chief Rodriguez had received the encrypted message through the ship's maintenance system. She now waited near the door of her cell, a makeshift tool hidden in her sleeve. The guards would be passing soon for the night inspection. Rodriguez had spent weeks studying the guards' patterns. The night shift was always less alert, with fewer personnel. Tonight, there would be only 2 guards checking her section instead of the usual 4. The familiar sound of clicking feet approached. Rodriguez took a deep breath and lay down on her bed, pretending to sleep. The blue force field hummed as the guards paused to check on her. The moment they moved to the next cell, Rodriguez slipped her tool into a small panel she had carefully loosened over the past weeks. A quick twist, and the force field flickered. For just 3 seconds, it weakened enough for her to slide through. The corridor was dimly lit. Rodriguez moved silently, pressing against the wall. Her destination was 4 levels up, in the ship's command section. According to Powell's message, that's where Captain Martinez was being held for special interrogation. Meanwhile, in the lower detention area, Powell had already escaped his cell. Using his knowledge of the ship's systems, he had scheduled a false maintenance alert that would keep the guards busy for at least 15 minutes. Major Wright waited at their meeting point, a small junction in the ventilation system. "Did you get it?" Wright asked as Powell crawled into the space. Powell nodded and pulled out a small device. "Full download of the Galactic Codex. Everything we need to prove our case. And the escape pod. Prepped and ready in Launch Bay 3. It's set for maintenance checks, so the security is minimal." Wright nodded. "Let's get to the rendezvous point. Rodriguez should be bringing the captain soon." The 2 men crawled through the narrow passages Powell had mapped during his repair assignments. The ship was massive, but they had the advantage of surprise and human determination. On the command level, Rodriguez had reached the high security cells. 2 guards stood outside a reinforced door. She couldn't take them directly. They were too strong and would sound an alarm. Instead, she used Powell's trick. A small maintenance panel near the guards controlled the area's atmospheric settings. With careful precision, Rodriguez adjusted the oxygen mix. Within moments, the guards became disoriented, their movements sluggish. She stepped out from her hiding place and struck quickly, hitting pressure points on their exoskeletons that Powell had identified from the biological data he'd downloaded. The guards collapsed without raising an alarm. Rodriguez used their access card to open the door. Captain Martinez looked up in surprise as Rodriguez entered her cell. Despite weeks of interrogation, Martinez's eyes still held the same determination they had on the Frontier's bridge. "Time to go, Captain," Rodriguez said simply. Martinez stood immediately. "The others, Wright and Powell, are securing our escape route. We have a plan." As they moved through the corridors, Martinez listened to Rodriguez's explanation of Powell's discovery. The captain's face showed renewed hope. "If we can reach the Galactic Council with this evidence," Martinez said, "we might not only free ourselves but protect Earth." The 4 humans met at the designated junction near Launch Bay 3. Powell had brought simple disguises, maintenance coverings that would hide their human features long enough to reach the escape pod. "We'll have about 3 minutes once we enter the bay," Wright explained. "The pod is programmed for emergency launch procedures." "And our destination?" Martinez asked. "The Galactic Council headquarters," Powell said. "I've downloaded the coordinates. It's in the Sigma Draconis system, about a week's journey in the escape pod." "The Sulfuri will pursue us," Rodriguez warned. Martinez nodded grimly. "Then we'll need to be faster and smarter. Humanity's fate depends on us reaching the Council with this evidence." The 4 humans moved as one toward the launch bay, their future and Earth's hanging in the balance. Their prison break had just begun, but the real challenge would be what came after, convincing an indifferent galaxy that humans deserve justice. The Galactic Council station loomed before them like a massive wheel in space, its central hub connected to 5 enormous rings, each housing representatives from different sectors of the galaxy. Thousands of ships moved around it in careful patterns, from tiny personal vessels to massive diplomatic cruisers. Captain Martinez stared through the viewport of their stolen Sulfuri escape pod. The week-long journey had been difficult. They had needed to hide in an asteroid field for 2 days to avoid Sulfuri pursuit ships. Food and water had been rationed carefully. Now, As they approached the station, a new challenge awaited. "We're being hailed," Powell said from the communication console. Martinez nodded. "Open the channel." A stern alien face appeared on the screen. The being had light purple skin with small ridges along its forehead. Its eyes were large and entirely black. "Unidentified Sulfuri vessel, state your purpose and authorization," the being demanded. Martinez stepped forward. "My name is Captain Olivia Martinez of Earth. My crew and I request emergency asylum and an audience with the Galactic Council on matters of legal violation." The alien's expression didn't change, but there was a long pause. "Earth is not a recognized member world. Stand by for security inspection." Within minutes, their pod was surrounded by security vessels. They were directed to a small docking bay and met by a team of armed guards of various species. The humans were escorted from their pod and scanned with different devices. "They're not Sulfuri," one guard said to another. "Species unknown. Vital, carbon-based." An older alien stepped forward. Unlike the others, this one wore elaborate robes with symbols that suggested authority. "I am Port Administrator Vel. You claim to be from Earth." "Yes," Martins replied. "We were attacked by the Sulfuri Dominion without provocation or warning. They violated Rule Number 1 of the Interstellar Conflict Protocols." Administrator Vel's eyes widened slightly. "You know of the protocols. Interesting. Follow me." They were led through vast corridors filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human, while others defied description. Many stared at the humans with open curiosity or suspicion. "News of your escape has reached us," Vel said as they walked. "The Sulfuri have filed a formal complaint about primitive escapees stealing their property." "We have evidence," Wright said firmly. "The Sulfuri attacked our vessel without declaration of war or offering terms of surrender." Vel led them to a small conference room. "Wait here. I will consult with available council members." When the administrator left, Rodriguez moved to the door to listen. "Guards outside," she reported. "We're not going anywhere." Powell connected his hidden device to a terminal in the room. "I can access the council records from here," he said. "Let's see what they know about the Sulfuri." His fingers moved quickly across the interface. "Look at this," he said after a few minutes. "The Sulfuri have been reported for similar violations before. 3 other species filed complaints in the past 40 years. All cases were dismissed due to insufficient evidence or procedural concerns." "They've done this before," Martinez said grimly, "and gotten away with it." The door opened suddenly. A tall, slender alien with 4 arms entered. Its skin was pale blue with silver patterns that seemed to shift and flow like water. "I am Delegate Thress of the Andorian Federation," it said in a melodic voice. "I have reviewed your initial claim. It is troubling." Martinez stepped forward. "We have evidence the Sulfuri violated Rule Number 1 when they attacked our ship." Thress tilted its head. "Perhaps, but the Council is reluctant to interfere in matters between the Dominion and non-member species. The Sulfuri hold significant power here." "Justice should not depend on power," Wright argued. The delegate's silver patterns rippled. "An interesting perspective. The emergency session to hear your case will begin in 3 hours. I suggest you prepare carefully." Thress moved to leave, then paused. "I should warn you. Supreme Admiral Krestal himself is on his way to the station. He seems most eager to reclaim his property." As the door closed behind Thress, the 4 humans exchanged looks. They had reached the Council, but their fight was only beginning. The Council chamber was enormous. Curved tiers rose up on all sides, filled with representatives from dozens of species. Some appeared almost human, while others were entirely alien. Floating gas clouds contained in special fields, crystalline beings that sparkled in the light, and creatures with too many limbs to count. Captain Martinez stood at the center platform with her 3 crewmates. They had been given simple gray robes to wear, marking them as petitioners to the Council. Powell had managed to connect his device to the chamber's main display system, ready to show their evidence. "The emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session," announced a tall being with translucent skin. "We will hear the petition of the humans from Earth regarding alleged violations of the interstellar conflict protocols by the Sci-Fi Dominion." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Many leaned forward to get a better look at the humans. Martinez stepped forward. "Honorable Council, we present evidence that the Sci-Fi violated Rule Number 1 of the protocols. They attacked our vessel without declaration of war or offering terms of surrender." Powell activated the display. Images from the Frontier's data recorder showed the unprovoked attack and the ship's continuous peace broadcasts. "The Sci-Fi fired upon us while we were still sending peaceful greetings," Martinez continued. "At no point did they offer terms or declare hostile intent before attacking." The council members whispered among themselves. Then a harsh voice cut through the chamber. "These primitives lie." All eyes turned to see Supreme Admiral Crestel striding into the chamber. His chitinous armor gleamed, and several lower-ranking Sci-Fi followed him. The human vessel had weapons armed. "They approached our territory aggressively. We defended ourselves, as is our right. Our weapons systems were on standby, not armed," Wright countered. "Standard procedure for any deep space mission. And we were in neutral space, not Sci-Fi territory." The council leader raised a hand for silence. "We have reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. While there appears to be a technical violation of Protocol Rule 1, the council finds that the violation was minor. The Sci-Fi Dominion will receive a formal reprimand." "A reprimand?" Rodriguez said in disbelief. "They destroyed our ship and imprisoned our crew." "The natural progression protocol applies here," said another council member. "The Sci-Fi are an established galactic power. Earth is an emerging world. Some latitude is granted to established powers." Martinez saw the truth in their eyes. The council feared the Sci-Fi and would not truly stand against them. Politics outweighed justice. Crestel made a sound that his translator conveyed as laughter. "The humans will be returned to our custody. Their planet remains isolated under the progression protocol." Martinez felt despair rising. But then Powell whispered urgently to her, "Captain, there's another rule we can invoke. Combat arbitration. Rule 27. Martinez's eyes widened as Powell quickly explained. She stepped forward again. "Supreme Admiral Crestel claims victory over humanity," she said clearly. "Since the Council acknowledges a violation of the protocols occurred, even if deemed minor, I hereby invoke the right of combat arbitration under Rule 27 of the Galactic Codex." The chamber erupted in surprise. Many delegates stood up, talking excitedly. "Silence," the council leader demanded. When order returned, he looked at Martinez with new interest. "The right of combat arbitration has not been invoked for 300 years. Are you certain you understand what you are requesting?" "I do," Martinez said firmly. "One champion from each side. Single combat to determine the resolution of our dispute." Crestel's translator could not hide his shock. "These primitives cannot possibly understand our traditions. And yet they invoke them correctly," said Delegate Thress, standing from his seat. "The law is clear. If combat arbitration is invoked after an acknowledged protocol violation, the Council must grant it." The Council leader looked troubled but nodded. "Captain Martinez, who will serve as Earth's champion." Martinez turned to her crew. Wright stepped forward without hesitation. "Major Kevin Wright will represent humanity," she announced. Crestel's eyes narrowed. "Then Commander Draws will crush him and end this foolishness." The die was cast. For better or worse, Earth's fate now rested on a human soldier facing an alien warrior in combat neither fully understood. The combat arena was a perfect circle 50 feet across. Its floor was covered with a strange blue material that felt slightly soft underfoot. Around the arena, thousands of aliens sat in rising tiers of seats. Word of the unusual challenge had spread quickly through the station. Many had come to see the strange new species face a Sci-Fi warrior. Major Kevin Wright stood at one end of the arena, dressed in a simple black combat suit provided by Delegate Thress. The Andorian had spent the last few hours explaining the rules of combat arbitration and offering what advice he could. The Xalthori are physically stronger than humans, Thress had told him. Their exoskeleton provides natural armor, but they move in predictable patterns and struggle to adapt to unexpected tactics. Wright stretched his muscles carefully. Across the arena, Commander Draws entered. The Xalthori warrior stood nearly 7 feet tall, his black exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. 2 of his 4 arms held ceremonial blades, while the other 2 remained free for grappling. From a special platform, the council leader raised his hands. The combat arbitration between Earth and the Xalthori Dominion will now begin. Victory is achieved when one champion surrenders or is unable to continue. Lethal force is permitted but not required. Wright glanced at where Martinez, Powell, and Rodriguez sat. Their faces showed concern but also confidence in him. Earth's future might depend on this fight. Begin, the council leader announced. Commander Draws charged immediately, moving with surprising speed for his size. Wright dove to the side, rolling across the soft floor. The Xalthori's momentum carried him past, giving Wright precious seconds to assess his opponent. The alien was powerful but predictable, just as Thress had said. Wright had studied combat techniques for years, but he had never imagined using them against an alien with 4 arms and natural armor. Draws turned and attacked again, slashing with his blades. Wright ducked under one swing and blocked another, feeling the impact jar through his arm. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he pushed it aside, focused on survival. For several minutes, the fight continued with Wright evading most attacks, but taking glancing hits that slowly wore him down. The human was bleeding from several small cuts, while Draws remained largely unharmed. The crowd watched in silence. Many had expected the human to fall quickly. His continued resistance was surprising. "The human fights well," someone in the crowd said, "but he cannot win through defense alone." Wright knew this too. His strength was fading while Draws showed no signs of tiring. He needed to change his approach. Wright backed toward the edge of the arena, appearing to retreat. Draws followed, clearly believing victory was near. When the Xalthori lunged forward, Wright dropped to the floor and kicked upward with both feet, striking the underside of Draws's thorax, a weak point Powell had identified from the biological data. The Xalthori stumbled back, momentarily stunned. Wright pressed his advantage, striking repeatedly at the same area. Draws swung wildly with his blades, but his movements were now less coordinated. Wright rolled beneath another swing and grabbed a handful of the blue floor material, which tore free in his hand. He flung it into Draws's face, temporarily blinding the alien. In that moment of confusion, Wright landed a powerful blow to the joint where Draws's upper right arm connected to his body. There was a crack. Draws roared in pain as his arm hung limp. The blade fell from his suddenly useless hand. The crowd gasped. No one had expected the human to damage a Xalthori warrior's exoskeleton. Wright didn't pause. He continued his attack, targeting joints and weak points, moving unpredictably. Each time Draws adjusted his strategy, Wright changed his approach. The human was smaller and weaker, but he was adaptable. After a particularly vicious exchange that left Wright with a deep cut on his thigh, but Draws with another damaged limb, the Xalthori commander hesitated. For the first time, doubt showed in his alien eyes. The tide of battle had turned. The arena was silent as Commander Draws crashed to the ground. Major Wright stood over him, breathing hard, his body covered in sweat and blood. For a moment, no one moved. Then Draws raised his one still functioning hand in the universal gesture of surrender. "The human wins," the Xalthori commander said, his translator conveying disbelief in his own words. A roar swept through the arena. Nothing like this had happened in living memory. A representative of an unknown species had defeated a Xalthori warrior in formal combat. The council leader stood. By the ancient laws of combat arbitration, Earth has won its case. The Xalfori Dominion must withdraw all forces from human space immediately. Earth will be granted protected status under the Galactic Codex. Supreme Admiral Crest Tull's face showed rage, but even he could not argue with the outcome. Combat arbitration was binding. The Xalfori had lost. Martinez, Powell, and Rodriguez rushed to Wright's side. Medical attendants followed, beginning to treat his wounds. "You did it," Martinez said, her voice full of pride. Wright managed a tired smile. "We all did it. Powell found the rules. Rodriguez got us out. You invoked the right. I just finished the job." Over the next week, the humans were treated as honored guests on the council station. They were given proper quarters, medical care, and the opportunity to meet with representatives from various species. Many were curious about Earth, asking questions about human culture, technology, and history. Delegate Thress worked with Martinez to establish Earth's first provisional embassy at the council. The Andorians seemed genuinely interested in building a relationship with humanity. "Your species shows remarkable adaptability," Thress said as they finalized the agreement. "Most would have surrendered when faced with Xalfori power. Instead, you found a way to turn their own rules against them." "We have a saying on Earth," Martinez replied. "Knowledge is power." Powell spent his time with alien engineers, learning about technologies that could help Earth prepare for its new role in galactic society. The Council had agreed to authorize limited technology sharing to help humans protect themselves from future threats. Rodriguez coordinated with Council security to ensure safe passage for the human delegation back to Earth. They would travel on a Council diplomatic vessel, accompanied by representatives who would make official first contact with Earth governments. On their final day at the station, Wright was summoned to a small meeting room. To his surprise, a Xalfori waited inside. Not Crestel or Draws, but a different one with markings indicating a diplomatic role. "I am Envoy Trazor," the Xalfori said. "I bring a message from the Dominion." Wright tensed, ready for threats or demands. Instead, the envoy placed a small ornate box on the table, a peace offering. "We underestimated your species, Major Wright. That was our greatest mistake." After the envoy left, Wright opened the box to find a small crystal carved with symbols. Powell later identified it as a formal recognition of respect, a rare honor from the Xalfori. As the humans prepared to depart for Earth, the Council called one final session. The chamber was packed with representatives eager to witness this historic moment. In light of recent events, the Council leader announced, "A new entry has been added to the Galactic Codex." The main display showed the new text. Rule 743. Never underestimate the resourcefulness of a cornered species. Many delegates looked at the humans as this was read, some with newfound respect, others with caution. Martinez stood with her crew, ready to return home. They had arrived in space as explorers, been treated as primitives, and were leaving as respected equals. Earth would now take its place among the stars, not through superior technology or strength, but through human ingenuity and the determination to find a way forward against impossible odds. As their ship departed the Council station, Martinez looked back at the massive structure growing smaller in the viewport. "What do you think happens next?" Powell asked. Martinez smiled. "We make sure everyone remembers rule number 1.